I ask that all members rise for a moment of silence in remembrance of the Honorable John Robert Lewis.
Silence, followed by cheers and tears in the halls of Congress, paying tribute to civil rights legend John Lewis.
When John Lewis took the floor, everyone listened to him.
A conversation with California Representative Maxine Waters about her close friend and colleague. Meanwhile, the fight against COVID-19, cases are on the rise in 40 states, with testing lines stretching miles long in some of the hardest hit areas. The question many Americans are now asking, is more relief on the way from the government? And the promising results overseas in the race for a cure, are we one step closer to a vaccine? Stranded overseas, our special report on the Americans months later still struggling to get back to their country. The strike for Black lives, confronting systemic racism. The workers in more than 100 cities walking off their jobs. Change they want to see, and now. Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Starting the week off with a bit of optimism, some promising results to report tonight in the race for a vaccine. Scientists at Oxford University say their trial shows a double defense, fighting the virus both outside and inside cells. It's one of 23 vaccines in human trials, giving us some semblance of hope, and we certainly need that these days, especially here in the U.S., where coronavirus has now claimed the lives of more than 140,000 Americans. Deaths are on the rise today in 28 states. In Florida, 53 hospitals, they do not have any ICU beds available tonight. And those researchers at Oxford certainly feeling the urgency and the pressure. Our Tom Yamas leads us off with the worldwide effort underway to stop this virus in its tracks.
Tonight, with more than 14 million cases of COVID-19 around the globe, a potential breakthrough in the race to develop the first vaccine. A new study published in The Lancet finding the experimental Oxford vaccine, one of 23 vaccines currently in human trials, appears safe and activates the immune system to respond to the virus.
It's both arms of the immune system, and we think that gives us our best chance of getting good protection.
More than 1,000 volunteers between 18 and 55 years old participating in the Oxford University study.
I don't want to be sitting down not doing anything where I could potentially help out as well.
This vaccine is vital to be able to return to normalcy.
The study finds the vaccine produces a double defense, antibodies that neutralize the virus and prevent it from spreading within the body, and T cells, white blood cells that attack the virus. Right now, the vaccine in phase 3 trials, on track to be the first to be widely produced. The U.S. government investing $1.2 billion in the Oxford vaccine developed by AstraZeneca, ordering 300 million doses. But even if it's proven effective to protect against the coronavirus, doctors warn for it to work, people need to be willing to get it.
Everything about this pandemic has become politicized. Do you see the vaccine becoming politicized?
I'm hoping that political leaders across the entire political aisle not turn this into a red state or a blue state issue.
The study finding limited side effects, especially when volunteers took acetaminophen. And with no signs of the pandemic slowing down, the Oxford researchers say they know the pressure is on to create an effective vaccine as quickly and as safely as possible.
We feel that there's urgency and pressure really every day. So people are working day and night, they're working weekends, and we're not going to stop till we get an answer.
Certainly determined for answers, and Tom joins us now with those promising findings in this race for a vaccine. Tom, the WHO is calling this good news, but making it clear that there's still a long way to go before we have a vaccine that's proven effective against this virus and ready for the public. Bottom line here, Tom, when can Americans expect a vaccine?
Right, Lindsay. Well, researchers say they're going to have more results by September. They're going to have tested more people then, so we'll know a little bit more. Most experts think we'll have a vaccine, and there's several being tested right now, by the end of the year, early 2021. But here's the thing. It's going to go to the most vulnerable in our populations first. Experts think it'll be widely available as early as the spring. Lindsay?
Okay, Tom Yamas reporting for us. Thanks, Tom. And next to the continued trouble with testing in so many places, massive lines stretching for blocks and people waiting for more than a week to get results. And tonight, the governor in Florida is making an urgent plea to those who have already recovered, asking them to donate plasma. Our Victor Wakendo reports.
Tonight, at the epicenter of the pandemic in America, this miles-long line for testing in Miami-Dade County. Florida is one of 40 states where cases are rising. More than 10,000 new cases for the 6th day in a row.
If you had been infected.
Protesters frustrated with Florida's governor, drowning him out at this news conference today. Just months ago, he scolded the media for overhyping the virus.
Wait 2 weeks, Florida's going to be next. Just like Italy, wait 2 weeks. Well, hell, we're 8 weeks away from that, and it hasn't happened.
Today, he made an urgent plea for plasma.
Your plasma will be able to be used to help other patients.
One Florida Sheriff's Department says despite a ban on large gatherings, they've broken up several huge block parties recently, like this one that went past 2 a.m. earlier this month. There are growing concerns at the Villages, Florida's largest retirement community, where cases and hospitalizations are on the rise. And tonight, with the nationwide demand for testing and fast results at an all-time high, public health officials in Connecticut confirmed 90 people received false positives, many of them nursing home residents, due to a flaw in their testing system. They're now reaching out to impacted patients. Across the country, 39 states reporting an increase in hospitalizations, some pushed to the brink. In Hidalgo County, Texas, patients are waiting up to 10 hours before an initial exam.
It's very difficult when you are putting your mom's best friend in a body bag.
John Place spent 17 days on a ventilator after the virus spread through his entire Florida household. His son contracted the virus at a friend's house.
They're not understanding that if they walk out again and infect somebody else and bring it home, especially if they live in a multi-generational home, other people aren't going to be so lucky.
And with the school year fast approaching, the debate is raging over how to get kids back to school. In Missouri, Governor Mike Parson defending his decision to reopen them this fall.
And if they do get COVID-19, which they will, and they will when they go to school, they're not going to the hospitals. They're not going to have to sit in doctor's office days. They're going to go home, and they're going to get over it.
In Ohio, where there was an anti-mask rally at the State House over the weekend, Governor Mike DeWine now worried Ohio could become the next Florida.
If you look at our numbers today versus where Florida was a month ago, we have very similar numbers. So we're very, very concerned.
New York's governor certainly calling people out and threatening that he will shut back down again. Victor Wakendo joins us now from Miami Beach. And Victor, the mayor there has instituted a curfew. That's just for certain parts of the city tonight.
That's right, Lindsay. Like where we are on Ocean Drive, usually no stranger to parties here, but now there is an early curfew in effect for this street and some other really popular ones here on South Beach. If you don't wear a mask, you will get fined. Local leaders are just desperate to slow the spread and avoid another stay-at-home order. Miami's mayor saying that is still on the table. Lindsay?
Really trying to crack down. All right, Victor Wakendo, thanks so much for your reporting as always. And we head now to Washington, where President Trump is turning his attention back to the coronavirus. And starting tomorrow, he'll be bringing back those daily coronavirus task force briefings. The president also tweeted this photo of him wearing a mask, calling it patriotic. This all comes as his standing in the polls is sliding. And at the same time, he's pushing to cut additional money for testing and for the CDC out of the next stimulus package. ABC's chief White House correspondent Jonathan Karl has the latest.
After weeks of saying little to nothing about the surge in COVID-19 infections across the country, the president says he's changing course.
So I think what we're going to do is I'll get involved and we'll start doing briefings.
The move comes after his political advisors warned that if he doesn't convince more people he is taking the pandemic seriously, he is likely to lose in November.
We had very successful briefings. I was doing them, and we had a lot of people watching, record numbers watching.
But those briefings abruptly ended not long after the president speculated about injecting disinfectants.
Is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning?
president shifted his focus to other subjects, referring to outbreaks of COVID-19 as, quote, embers that could easily be put out. Chris Wallace of Fox News challenged him on that.
But this isn't burning embers, sir. This is a forest fire.
But I don't say. I say flames. We'll put out the flames, and we'll put out, in some cases, just burning embers. Florida became more flame-like, but it's going to be under control.
He also called Dr. Anthony Fauci, the government's leading expert on the virus, an alarmist, and said he opposed a national mandate to wear masks.
I want people to have a certain freedom, and I don't believe in that, no.
But today, his Surgeon General said there is no threat to freedom in asking someone to wear a mask.
I'm begging you, please understand that we are not trying to take away your freedoms when we say wear a face covering.
And later, 3 months after the CDC recommended people wear masks, the president tweeted this picture, saying, quote, "Many people say that it is patriotic to wear a face mask when you can't socially distance. There is nobody more patriotic than me."
The president now on board encouraging people to wear face masks. Jonathan Karl joins us now from Washington. And John, these changes from the president come as we have new numbers from our ABC News Washington Post poll on the president's standing. Give us a sense of those numbers and how much they could actually be driving these moves by the president on both masks and resuming these briefings.
Lindsay, these numbers for the president are just devastating in terms of the way the public is perceiving his handling of this crisis. Take a look at this one. Who do you trust more to handle COVID-19? 54% said Biden, just 34% said Trump, a 20-point gap. And that is also weighing on his overall voter preference. If you look at the poll asked registered voters, who would you vote for? Biden, 55%, Trump, 40%. A 15-point Biden lead. So, yes, those numbers are very much driving this change in strategy. In fact, one of the president's top political advisors recently told me that the message has been delivered to the president that if he doesn't turn this around in terms of the public perception, if the public doesn't come to see him taking this crisis more seriously and doing a better job with it, that he is likely to lose in November.
And, John, the White House and Congress are now negotiating the next coronavirus economic package. But what's the story behind this effort by the White House to actually try to strip out new funding for testing and for the CDC from this? And how's that being received?
Well, this is something where he's fighting Republicans, the Senate Republicans who are now taking the lead in drafting the Senate version of this, the Republican version of this $1 trillion coronavirus relief package. Included $25 billion in grants to the states to expand testing, also billions more for the National Institutes of Health and for the CDC. The White House has said that they want all of that money stripped from the bill. The argument that the White House has made is that there is already funding in the pipeline that has not been spent for the CDC, for the NIH, and for testing. But this is not going to fly. The congressional Republicans I have spoken to, including tonight, Lindsay, have told me that this bill will include additional funding for the CDC and the NIH and for testing.
Jonathan Karl for us from the nation's capital. Thanks so much, John. And staying in Washington now, and to that emotional scene that played out today on the House floor.
Our hero, our colleague, our brother, our friend, received and answered his final summons from God Almighty.
The House honoring the memory of legendary Congressman John Lewis, who died over the weekend at the age of 80. His colleagues joined in a moment of silence, and then a round of applause for the civil rights icon, the last living speaker from the 1963 March on Washington. And joining us now is longtime colleague and close friend of Congressman Lewis, Representative Maxine Waters of California. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
I'm delighted to be with you, and I'm so appreciative for the time that's been given to the life and times of John Lewis.
Let's start with that as well. I mean, so much going on, but just to take a moment to have you reflect on the life and legacy of the congressman, what he meant to you personally, and also what he meant, how he loomed so large for the country.
John Lewis, as you know, and as everyone knows by now, was an extraordinary man, an unusual human being who from a very early age understood that something was wrong with discrimination, with racism. At 17 years old, he got involved in the civil rights movement. And again, as it has been said over and over again, he was only 23 years old when he was able to speak at the March on Washington, D.C. He worked with Dr. Martin Luther King. He headed the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and he continued. He was consistent in everything that he did on the issue of opening up this country for fairness and for justice and for support of the Constitution of the United States for everyone's right to participate equally in this democracy. And so I knew John before I came to Congress, and I knew about his work and what he was doing. And I remember when he ran for Congress in a very tough race. And when I came to Congress, I can remember looking at him and thinking that this civil rights icon is someone who is not only emerging as a leader of the Congress of the United States, he's going to be able to give the Congress and the House of Representatives the kind of direction that's going to lead us to a better place. And so when John Lewis took the floor, everybody got quiet. Because they knew that he had something important to say, and everyone listened to him. He was perhaps the most highly respected member of the House of Representatives ever since I have been here. But along with his work, he always advocated nonviolence. In whatever he said and whatever he did, whenever he talked to young people, it was about being able to stand up and fight, but about nonviolence.
And of course, he had said and gone on record recently saying there's still a lot of work to be done for sure. I do want to turn now to the ongoing fight against the coronavirus. Your state of California seemed to have had a handle on the virus after the initial surge this spring, but we're now starting to see that summer spike, including in your city of Los Angeles. Do you think that LA will need to have another full lockdown in order to get things under control?
Well, I think we're headed there. The governor has already come out with, mandating that everybody wears a mask and that he's locking down. I don't know how far it has gone, but we did very well, as you said, early on. But I think the pressure from all of those governors and states that were opening up caused a lot of pressure to be put on him, and he began to open up. And I don't think that he really wanted to do that, but he started it. And of course, people flocked to the beaches and the bars, etc. And so now we have that surge. We're right up there with what is happening in Florida and in Texas and Arizona. And as Dr. Fauci has said, this is not a new surge. This is a continuing surge that has taken us up in ways that we did not think would happen to us in California because we were doing so well.
And Congress is also back in Washington and working on another possible round of economic stimulus. Are you concerned that the two sides won't be able to get on the same page before Americans start to feel even more economic pain in the coming weeks, especially regarding those expanded unemployment benefits that are set to expire?
Well, what I'm continuously surprised about is the fact that we have Republican members, in the Senate led by McConnell, who will not, and seems as if they are afraid to, oppose the President of the United States, who has failed in his leadership on this issue. It is absolutely unthinkable that we here in the United States could be failing in the way that we're doing when we have so many other countries who've always looked up to us and smaller countries who are doing so well. And so it's in the hands of the United States Senate, and we expect that they're either going to have to come into negotiations in a credible way, knowing and understanding what the situation is in this country, knowing and understand that COVID-19 is surging.
And lastly, just switching gears here, I want to ask you about a moment that's popped up on social media showing you at a police stop and saying they stopped a brother, so I stopped to see what they were doing. Just explain what happened and why you felt that it was necessary for Auntie Maxine to get involved.
Well, absolutely. Fresh on my mind is what happened with George Floyd. Fresh on my mind is what happened with Eric Garner. Fresh on my mind is the fact that unarmed Black men are being killed by the people that we pay to protect and serve us. And so, of course, when I witnessed another Black man being stopped pretty early in the morning by the police, I wanted to know what was going on. They did let the young man go after they had stripped him down. They had taken his shirt, they'd taken his jacket, they'd even taken off his boots and all of that. They were not perhaps too happy that I was watching, and they told me to move my vehicle. I did that. And I stood there, and they said they were going to give me a ticket because I had not parked correctly. I invited them to do just that. If they felt they needed to give me a ticket, please do that. And then when they wanted to force me to sign the ticket, I told them I could not do that. I would not do that. And they said that did I know I could be arrested if I did not sign the ticket to guarantee my appearance. I told them I did not intend to appear anywhere. And if they needed to, and it was their duty, and they felt they needed to arrest me, feel free to do so, because I was not going to sign the ticket. They called out a captain who came, who I think, told them that perhaps it was not necessary to talk about ticketing me, and they should not give me a ticket. And so it was all over.
Congresswoman Maxine Waters, we thank you so much for your time.
You're so welcome. And thank you for all of the time that you're given for John Lewis, our hero.
And today, across the country, in more than 100 cities, thousands of service and healthcare workers participated in a strike for Black lives, a union-led protest with workers walking off the job to protest for both racial and economic justice in the midst of the pandemic. ABC's Will Carr followed the protests in Los Angeles today. He joins us now. Will, what sorts of changes are these protesters calling for?
Well, Lindsay, the protest here in Los Angeles had multiple stops. It just wound up here at USC, and you can see that sign on that truck that says abolish the USC Police Department. They are also calling for major corporations all across the country that came out in support of Black Lives Matter in the wake of George Floyd's death to now come out and support both their Black and their brown employees, the essential workforce, the people who are members of the service industry, people who work in fast food restaurants who cannot work from home and are so worried about getting infected by COVID and possibly taking it back to their families.
I have to go to work. I have to take care of my family, and it's scary because my parents are older. My dad's 71, my mom's 62. They're both cancer survivors. So every day I go home, I'm scared, like they might get it.
And she is not alone. Protesters are asking for more PPE, hazard pay, and better training, among other things. We spoke to William LaChapelle today, who brought his 2-year-old son to the protest. He was an Uber driver until the pandemic hit. He's now trying to drive for DoorDash to provide for his 7 kids. He tells me he has not received any government aid while he continues to worry about the world that his kids are growing up in.
It's a worry every time you get pulled over around it.
And what is that worry when you look at your son and your other kids?
I worry a lot about it. Worry that I might not be here to raise him one day because of the color of my skin.
LaChapelle tells me if there is a silver lining with all of this, is that he's had more time at home with his family. Lindsay.
And Will, are the protesters protecting themselves, trying to safely protest during this pandemic?
So that is really challenging. I've been at a lot of protests over the past couple of months, and that is really difficult during a pandemic. We did see some creativity today, people protesting from their cars. They went from one location to another in their cars, but at certain points, people did get out. They were not within, not keeping a 6 feet distance from each other, but pretty much everybody was wearing their masks today. So that is good, but that is the challenge with protests during a pandemic. Lindsay.
Indeed. Okay, Will Carr for us in Los Angeles. Thanks so much, Will. And now to the standoff in Portland, Oregon. Federal law enforcement officers using tear gas on protesters, taking some of them off the street by force. The mayor is now demanding those federal officers get out, saying that they are only making matters worse. But the president says he's looking to have more federal law enforcement in other cities as well. ABC's Kana Whitworth is in Portland.
Tonight, a city on edge. Over the weekend, some demonstrators responding to the president's deployment of federal agents officially there to protect federal property, clashing on the streets. Video tweeted out by Oregon Senator Jeff Merkley shows a protester being detained and placed in an unmarked minivan. Customs and Border Protection officials saying its agents took the action in the video because the protester was suspected of assaults against federal agents or destruction of federal property, and that suspect was moved into a safer location for further questioning. 29-year-old Mark Pettibone says something similar happened to him.
I feared for my life and I ran. And they eventually caught up with me and pulled me into the van.
City and state officials demanding the removal of agents. This morning, the president saying he would consider sending agents to other major American cities.
We're not going to let New York and Chicago and Philadelphia, Detroit and Baltimore and all of these, Oakland is a mess. We have more federal law enforcement, that I can tell you.
Lindsay, we just spoke with the governor. She says she is in agreement with the local mayor here. They believe that this is all a political stunt by the president. She adds that she has actually requested federal assistance for things like COVID testing, but received no response. Yet she is very critical of the federal law enforcement troops that are on the ground in her city, she says, violating the civil rights of her citizens. Lindsay.
All right, our thanks to you, Kana. And a note involving ABC News tonight. The chairman of Walt Disney Television, Peter Rice, issued a statement about Barbara Fedita, the senior vice president for talent and business affairs at ABC News. After allegations in press accounts, Rice said, quote, outside counsel has completed its independent investigation of the allegations against Barbara Fedita. The investigation substantiated that Ms. Fedita did make some of the unacceptable, racially insensitive comments attributed to her. It also substantiated that Ms. Fedita managed in a rough manner and on occasion used crass and inappropriate language. Lastly, Rice says the investigation found no basis for the claims that Ms. Fedita was the subject of dozens of HR complaints and that ABC News spent millions of dollars in confidential settlements related to Ms. Fedita, as alleged in some press accounts. He adds, although Ms. Fedita made contributions to the organization over the 20-year span of her career, in light of the overall findings, we have determined that she can no longer serve in a leadership role and will not be returning to ABC News. Peter Rice added, we are committed to working together to build on what we have learned from the investigation and foster an environment that is fair, just, and welcoming to all. And when we come back, the sweltering heat for much of the country as temperatures soar past 100 degrees. Is there any relief in sight? Also, a look at Kanye West's first campaign event and whether you'll be seeing him on a ballot box near you anytime soon. And stranded in South America, the Americans whose lives have been in limbo since the pandemic started, just trying to get back home tonight. Stay with us. Welcome back, everyone. And now to the ongoing struggle for some Americans to return from overseas. Back in March, Americans abroad in Peru faced a major crisis when the country's president shut down its borders in an effort to stem the spread of COVID-19. Now, some Americans are still stuck in that country with little help from the U.S. government to get out. Our Maggie Rulli has this report.
Remember the chaotic scenes like these playing out at airports around the world.
Thousands of Americans are finding themselves stranded abroad as a result of this coronavirus pandemic.
Countries locking down their borders, trying to contain the spread of coronavirus. In Peru, a sudden shutdown of domestic and international travel on March 16th brought the country to a standstill. Many Americans were left panicking about how they were going to get back home.
It's just been very, very traumatic.
Police outside, Americans tried to get out, they were held with a gun. It's just not a good situation here right now.
4 months later, Peru's now easing restrictions. The U.S. State Department says it's repatriated more than 12,000 U.S. citizens from the country, but many who stayed behind to wait out the crush of evacuations now find themselves stuck with limited options and even fewer government resources to assist them. Citizens like Abby Matson from Georgia. She's been living in Peru for 2 years and says she decided to stay behind in part to make sure the nonprofit she worked for would survive.
I just felt like I needed to stay and I needed to do everything possible to continue to help these people, even if it meant, not knowing what my life would look like for a couple months.
The nonprofit supports recent refugees from Venezuela in Peru, and it was here in February, just about a month before lockdown, when she found her other reason for staying behind, Alejandro.
And the way that we met is in his English class. He wrote me a letter in English.
We Skype with the two from their home in Lima, and together they're impossibly cute.
And then he gave me the letter the day before Valentine's Day.
Lo primero que pude notar de ella.
First thing that I noticed about Abby when I wanted to get to know her was just her commitment to the children in the program and to the different moms, and it was just something that was really special, and it filled me a lot too to see that in her.
And then on Valentine's Day, he found me and gave me a piece of Venezuelan chocolate. So that's kind of how we started.
Their love simply beams across the screen as they tell us about how they proposed to each other. She asked him first.
Ya estábamos como siendo muy amigos.
So we were already becoming really good friends, and we were really with each other, spending a lot of time with each other at that point, and like each other. And at that point, I knew that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her. But it was really her that took the initiative to say something to me first. And she said, Alejandro, I want to spend the rest of my days with you. And it was just this explosion of emotions inside me.
And as they share with us some exciting news.
We found out in June that we're expecting our first child.
But all of that joy makes things more complicated.
All of a sudden it felt like everything had a time on it,
Abby wants to come back to the U.S. to have her baby. But Alejandro's a Venezuelan national, and he can only come to the U.S. if he's granted a U.S. visa. They started his application in June, but they're still waiting for what could be a years-long process. Visa services in Peru have been halted indefinitely since March 16th, and they've been suspended worldwide except for life and death emergencies. And today, the U.S. Consular Agency in Cusco, Peru officially closed its doors until at least November, making the future even more uncertain.
I do think in general there will be more traffic or more people who will use the U.S. Embassy here in Lima. So I think when there's less agencies available to support, especially in a time of crisis, it can make it more difficult.
Valerie Edmondson Bolaños and her organization Warrior Angels Rescue has helped to evacuate at least 350 Americans since the start of the crisis. She says the situation on the ground has been challenging.
At the beginning, people were panicking because they had been stuck in Peru for 4 days. And little did they know, and little did any of us know, that 4 months later, they'd still be there, some of them. And so some people have chosen to just live within their circumstances and make the best of a really awful situation. Now with the embassies and the consulates shutting down, people are under even more pressure. They're feeling even more pressure to get out.
Even with the good news of Peru restarting short flights between Cusco and the capital, Lima is now the only place in the entire country that can process visas, passport requests, and other travel-related issues for U.S. citizens and residents.
U.S. citizens are having an impossible time getting home right now. And with lawful permanent residents, it's a little bit harder than that. And then with anyone who's not a lawful permanent resident yet, but was in the process of applying for that status or visa, it's nearly impossible from what I've seen.
And Americans are also struggling to find affordable flights home. Francisco Polino has been in Lima, Peru since New Year's after initially visiting his parents. Medical issues and a family emergency caused him to postpone his March flight back to the States. He's been stuck ever since, running out of money fast, and says he has dwindling hope of getting out soon.
Now it's July, almost the end of July. Flights are so expensive. I don't have any money left. And then most of the flights are requiring a direct deposit, which means I will need to have money here in Peru. I don't have.
There are no more government-organized repatriation flights out of Peru after the State Department warned American citizens to act immediately if they wanted to return to the U.S.
People overseas need to ask themselves, do I want to go home or am I ready to stay abroad indefinitely? This is especially crucial for people who are in Central and South America, where we've been focusing the bulk of our efforts to date. This is a decision they need to make now.
The U.S. Embassy still sends notice of private charters and commercial flights. Many Americans have paid upwards of more than $2,000 per seat for a ticket from Lima to Miami. Once on U.S. soil, many Americans then have to shell out additional cash to make it all the way home.
My final destination on paper is San Francisco. But yeah, that will be, it will only take me halfway through. A flight to Miami, then I will need to take another 5-hour flight. I have all my belongings in the storage unit. I just want to go back home.
Abby, who says she's fortunate enough to be able to afford a way out of Peru, says her biggest challenge now is being able to get out of there with her fiance and her soon-to-be child.
If Alejandro cannot get that visa in time and you have to make the decision of whether you leave without him to go back and have your baby in the U.S., what do you think you'll do? What will you decide?
We've talked about it, and it would be a really hard decision. We might have to cross that bridge when we come to it.
For now, the two have decided to wait, hoping the overwhelmed consular staff can come through with a U.S. visa in time. But the young couple says they're hopeful and are looking forward to beginning their new life and to starting their new family together in the United States.
Pues yo diría que says, I'm going to trust in whatever God has planned for us, and whatever he has for us, I'm going to accept it. And if that means that she has to go back to get the medical care that she needs, then I know that it's going to be the best thing for our baby. And so I am going to accept and trust whatever happens.
We're just really hoping for the best at this point, and really hoping that since we've got a couple months that a miracle could happen or something amazing could happen, you know.
For ABC News, I'm Maggie Rulli in London.
Thanks to Maggie for that. And ahead on ABC News Prime, concern tonight for millions of unemployed Americans. Will their federal relief run out in the coming days? We take a look by the numbers. Also, Kanye West is making headlines, but is his campaign for president making deadlines? And the deadly attack on the family of a federal judge, a gunman dressed as a delivery driver, what authorities are now revealing. Hey, welcome back, everyone. With Congress back in session after a 2-week recess, the debate over the next coronavirus relief package is heating up. We take a look at what this means for millions of out-of-work Americans desperate for a lifeline. By the numbers, 32 million Americans are now claiming unemployment benefits, and many of them are receiving an extra $600 a week in federal relief on top of their state unemployment benefits. But these payments are set to expire in just 10 days on or before Friday, July 31st, if they're not extended. Americans who lose this federal relief will see an immediate 50 to 75% pay cut, according to an analysis by Evercore ISI. Back in May, House Democrats passed a $3 trillion relief package that would extend those $600 payments through January 2021. But Republicans want a lower price tag, around $1 trillion, and have discussed redoing the federal unemployment benefits. And the White House has pushed for adding a payroll tax cut to their legislation. When we come back to school, one of the largest school districts in Texas is planning on handling a return to learning. Summer scorcher, more than a dozen states dealing with a serious heat wave, pushing temperatures into the triple digits this week. And the major news for one of hip-hop's biggest stars, Nicki Minaj. Well, she's already done a lot. Now she's taken on a new role, wearing a new hat, as we take a look at our top trending stories on abcnews.com.
Scientists at Oxford University reporting good news in an early trial of their experimental COVID-19 vaccine, saying it's been shown to prompt a protective immune response in hundreds of people.
It is good news. This is a positive result, but again, there is a long way to go. These are phase 1 studies. We now need to move into larger scale real-world trials, but it is good to see more data and more products moving into this very important phase of vaccine discovery.
Larger scale trials are currently underway.
At the White House, President Trump said he's going to resume daily coronavirus briefings, which halted in late April.
I was doing them, and we had a lot of people watching, record numbers watching. In the history of cable television, there's never been anything like it.
Nearly 64,000 new cases were reported today as the president met with congressional Republicans to discuss the next round of economic stimulus, but the White House has resisted adding funding for more COVID-19 tests.
Today, the Northeast is enduring a heat wave. Record-breaking temperatures
has reported heat advisories and warnings across 15 states from South Carolina up to Maine.
Multiple water. I got electrolyte packs.
It's extremely hot.
The heat index hitting triple digits from D.C. to Philly to New York. And take a look at the numbers on the way. No relief coming in the next several days.
Just make sure you're pacing yourself, and of most importance, plenty of fluids. Keep hydrated and check on your neighbors and pets.
Presidential candidate Kanye West has missed the cut in a key state.
Kanye West won't be on the ballot in South Carolina. He had until noon Monday to gather and submit 10,000 signatures in his bid for president. That didn't happen. This after his first campaign event Sunday, in which he suggested everyone who has a baby should get $1 million, declared Harriet Tubman didn't free any slaves, and broke down in tears talking about how he and wife Kim Kardashian discussed ending her first pregnancy with their daughter North. A baby Barbie is coming. Nicki Minaj announcing that she's pregnant with her first child. She let the world know by posting some baby bump pictures on Instagram with the hashtag Preggers, saying she's overflowing with excitement and gratitude.
And now to the deadly attack on the family of a federal judge in New Jersey. A masked shooter dressed as a FedEx delivery man killed the judge's son and injured her husband. A suspect is now dead. Here's ABC's Stephanie Ramos on what we're learning about the alleged killer and his possible connection to this family.
Tonight, the mystery deepening into the brazen daytime shootings at the New Jersey home of federal judge Esther Salas by a man dressed in a FedEx uniform, his face covered. 5 p.m. Sunday, authorities say Judge Salas's 20-year-old son Daniel answers the door, is shot and killed. Salas's husband, Mark Anderl, is also then shot and survives. The suspect spotted by a neighbor walking away calmly.
He's not like running or someone's following him. Not that way. Sad. Really sad.
Then today, in Liberty, New York, 100 miles north of the crime scene, law enforcement sources say the alleged shooter had been found dead in a car from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot. That suspect, law enforcement sources identifying as Manhattan lawyer and self-described anti-feminist Roy Den Hollander. In 2015, he represented a woman before Judge Salas who wanted to register for the military draft, but was replaced for unknown reasons June of 2019. He's also known for suing Manhattan nightclubs over ladies' night discounts, telling ABC News in 2007,
I'm now trying to turn this tables of equality on the feminazis who have changed this country.
Judge Salas was reportedly in the basement at the time of the shootings and not harmed. Lindsay, authorities are investigating any connections to Hollander besides that 2015 case and if he made any threats. This is a problem U.S. Marshals have seen before. Just last year, they released data showing close to 4,500 threats had been made against federal judges. Lindsay.
Our thanks to Stephanie. And we turn now to the continuing debate about schools reopening. And we'd like to bring in Dr. LaTanya Goffney, the superintendent of the Aldine Independent School District in Houston, Texas. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, your district is, of course, in a COVID-19 hotspot, and you have chosen to begin the school year with remote learning. Was this a difficult decision, and how did you decide on this course of action?
Thank you so much again. Just so we're clear and to kind of set the context, if it's okay, Aldine is located in Houston. If you've ever flown into Bush Intercontinental Airport, you are in the middle of Aldine. We have 67,000 students, 9,000 employees. And our students, we have 73% Hispanic and 23% African-American. And so as you just stated, Houston is experiencing a surge, and the communities in my district have been hit the hardest. When we first started looking at how we were going to come back, our guiding principle was we were going to go as fast as we could, but as slow as we must. And in April, I was planning to go fast because I wanted our students back in our face-to-face and experiencing face-to-face instruction, because as we all know, the great equalizer is a highly effective teacher in a classroom. However, with the surge and everything that's happening in Houston and our community being hit as it has been, our other belief was we had to err on the side of safety. We had to lead with safety. And as you think about the numbers, if you go and look at Harris County, the zip codes that have been hit the hardest, they're in Aldine ISD. And the one with the highest number of deaths is in Aldine ISD. And so while I definitely can't wait to welcome our students back for face-to-face, we know that we must keep everyone safe.
And how will you know when it's time to return students to the classroom? Are you looking for a specific infection rate or other measure before going back to in-person learning?
Of course, we'll be leaning on our health officials, our local health officials, and hopefully, I think in April or March when it first started, we were talking about bending the curve, and we were looking at a decrease in the number of cases as well as infection rates. And so, of course, that'll continue to be a priority. And we'll continue, again, to listen to our local health officials, our county judge, our local mayor. They've been providing reports. And so that we'll continue to lean on them as well.
How concerned are you about the potential for a widening achievement gap and also the challenges for working parents who are now going to have to supervise their children during work hours?
I can tell you that's what keeps me awake at night. As a student of poverty, raised in poverty, and thinking about the challenges that many of our parents are having right now, recognizing that, like my grandmother, we have parents who have to work. However, as we're looking at moving forward, one thing we know how to do is educate kids. We don't know how to, prepare for loss of life. And so in the event that the one thing I can say, there's a lot of uncertainties, but the one thing I'm certain of is we have highly effective teachers who are prepared and right now studying ways that we can be more creative and meet students' needs remotely.
And lastly, do you agree with the Houston mayor that the city should go back into lockdown in order to slow the infection rate?
What I know for sure, or what I've learned and what I've read from across the nation, and even the fact that this is a global pandemic, is the safest place for everyone is home. And so if we could all stay home for a period of time, then I'm sure, hopefully, that we'll be able to move forward. But there's so many different unknowns. And so what I know here is we're providing choices for our families eventually. And then we're going to do the very best we can in whatever environment we're in, whether it's remote or face-to-face.
Dr. Goffney, thank you so much for your time. Stay safe.
Thank you.
And coming up next on ABC News Prime, the tributes pouring in for John Lewis and a look back on the life and legacy of the civil rights icon in his own words. Stay with us. And finally tonight, the legacy and life of John Lewis, the civil rights legend and 17-term congressman from Georgia, passed away late Friday at 80 years old. The tributes tonight for a man who devoted his life to racial justice and equality, encouraging people to go out and make good trouble.
Get out there and push and pull until we redeem the soul of America.
His fiery speech, dogged passion, and boundless courage and commitment to civil rights made Congressman John Lewis an icon.
When you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, say something, do something, get in trouble, good trouble, necessary trouble.
An outpouring of tributes for a legend, including from Barack Obama, who credited Lewis with helping to make his presidency possible, later awarding him the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2011, and now sharing these words. Not many of us get to live to see our own legacy play out in such a meaningful, remarkable way. John Lewis did. And Oprah recounting a conversation she had with the former freedom rider just last week, writing that she told him, "Thank you for your courage leading the fight for freedom. My life as it is would not have been possible without you." As a college student, he helped lead the fight against racial inequality by participating in multiple protests. In 1963, he was just 23, the youngest speaker at the March on Washington, right alongside Martin Luther King Jr.
My friends, let us not forget that we are involved in a serious social revolution.
2 years later, he would lead peaceful protesters across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, fighting for the right to vote. They were met with brutal force by state troopers, Lewis bloodied and with a fractured skull. He would continue his fight as a U.S. representative, known as the conscience of Congress. His last public appearance just 6 weeks ago, fittingly taking a bold stance at Black Lives Matter Square in Washington, D.C.
John was an activist until his body gave out. To lose him now, I just feel a profound, unshakable sadness that we won't have him in this country at a time that we need healing and we need love and we need each other.
And very fittingly, this is our image of the day. Mourners gathering to pay tribute to John Lewis in front of the mural painted in his honor in downtown Atlanta. There's also a growing memorial tonight of letters and tributes forming at the base of the 65-foot tall painting, a fitting way to commemorate a man whose legacy is larger than life. And that is our show for this hour. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. I'm Lindsay Davis, and we want to leave you tonight with John Lewis in his own words as we continue to remember and celebrate the life of the civil rights legend. Good night.
Sometimes you have to do something out of the ordinary. Sometimes you have to make a way out of no way. We have been too quiet for too long. There comes a time when you have to say something, when you have to make a little noise, when you have to move your feet.
Keep marching, keep sitting in, keep standing in, keep protesting until the sagging walls of segregation come tumbling down.
And I said to all of the young people, to all of the children, we are getting in good trouble to set people free. We can do it. If we fail to do it, history will not be kind to us. The people have a right to inquire. They have a right to know. The people have a right to know whether they can put their faith and trust in the outcome of our election.
We must cry, and we all must cry together. And we want our freedom, and we want it now.
Our children and their children will ask us, what did you do? What did you say? For some, this vote may be hard. We have a mission and a mandate to be on the right side of history. It doesn't matter whether we're black or white, Latino, Asian American, or Native American. It doesn't matter whether we are straight or gay. We are one people, we are one family. We all live in the same house.